Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today on this Tuesday, including Craig Button, who's standing by, brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort, located oceanside in beautiful Parksville. The Bayside, one of Vancouver Island's premier getaway spots. Exciting additions to the Bayside include their newly opened Bay Cafe, sourcing delicious local products and seasonal cocktail list in the Bayside restaurant. Book your island getaway at BaysideOceanfrontResort.com or call 250-248-8333. And don't forget to mention Donnie and Dolly for 10% off your nightly room rate. Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox just before we get to Craig. Derek from Vernon, shut the hell up about Empire Field seats. I sat on wooden seats for a hockey game. So boo-hoo about the seats at Empire.
Yeah, so is Derek...
Well, he says Empire Field. I'm wondering if he sat in the seats at Empire Stadium where you did. Craig doesn't care about this stuff. Let's get to him. Or maybe he does. Craig Button, TSN scouting director, joining us now as he always does on a Tuesday. You, back in the day as a kid growing up in Montreal, I know, maybe not at the Forum, but you must have sat on those old wooden benches at sporting events.
Well, we had Donnie. I will send you and Rick a picture. I have our Forum Stanley our seats from the Forum that were our family seats.
Oh wow!
My mother doesn't know how I ended up with them. My brothers don't know how I ended up with them. Bottom line is I got them. So anyway, they were wooden. Mm-hmm. But I can remember now. Rick's a little bit too young, Donnie. Now I know you'll remember the old Autostad.
Yes,
the Autostad.
Oh,
the Autostad where the Alouettes played. Sonny Wade and the boys. And I remember being a kid and going to the Autostad. I remember one time being there. It was like October. And it was cold and it was damp, and those seats were, you couldn't call them comfortable, but you didn't really know any other thing. You were just excited to be at the Autostad, the wind blowing in there. Oh, it was so miserable, but it was fun. I don't remember it as not being fun.
Yeah, we bring this up because there's a lot of people, including Ryan, who feel that the seats at Rogers Arena need to be replaced. They are falling apart. So I'm sure Francesco's aware of that. Hey, Craig, we leave on Friday our show, and not long after the Leafs make their big trade. We haven't talked to you about it yet. So Noel Acciari and Ryan O'Reilly joined the Toronto Maple Leafs from St. Louis. What are they going to do for that hockey team?
Well, I think number one is that they make them a better team. I don't think there's any question that what Kyle Dubas is trying to do is improve his team. And Morgan Riley, he was pressed on it on Saturday at the morning skate, and finally he just said, he goes, well, we're a better team today than we were before we had these two players. You know, the margins are thin. It's not like the Tampa Bay Lightning are far ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs, or the Toronto Maple Leafs are far ahead of the Tampa Bay Lightning now with the additions of O'Reilly and Acciari. But what you're trying to do is close that gap, and you're trying to find a way to, on those margins, try to give yourself a better chance. If we just go back to last year, Game 7, Braden Point goes down. What were the margins? It was Nick Paul. Nick Paul became the margin for victory. You know, I know he scored 2 goals, but like if Julien Brisebois doesn't go out and get Nick Paul, who knows what ends up happening? That's where you're trying to find a way to strengthen your team. And I don't think there's any question that Kyle Dubas did that. So, you know, Ryan O'Reilly, you know, he's got game. He's got game left. I don't think you can look at, he was injured this year. The St. Louis Blues just weren't functioning. They showed some good signs. They showed some signs that probably were reflective of who they really were. But, you know, Ryan O'Reilly, he's not going to be intimidated by anybody he's playing against. I think he brings a competitive discipline that I think is necessary come playoff time, that I think can be really effective for the Leafs. And Noel Acciari, you know, you add another player, right shot, can take face-offs, a little bit of weight. I think that it helps deeper down your forward group. So, you know, the whole idea is how do you make your team as strong as possible? And sometimes it's a little bit at a time. Everybody wants a massive deal. But to me, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're a better team with O'Reilly and Acciari.
If this trade doesn't work out, Craig, if the Leafs get knocked out in the first round again, what happens to Kyle Dubas?
Well, I mean, you think about what Kyle's done in the regular season, and the Leafs have been a very good team under his watch in the regular season. But I think that, it's not that he's not a good manager. I would have to think that the evaluation now becomes about, do we need somebody different there to try to affect a different result? 5 straight years losing in the first round with the same general manager, trying things. Don't make no mistake about it. Kyle has tried things, and I've been supportive of a number of his moves. And again, we talk about the margins, but I would have to think that after 5 straight failures, that Kyle Dubas's tenure in Toronto very well would probably come to an end.
Craig, Elias Pettersson on pace for 107 points, 40 goals. What are you seeing from this kid lately? He's picked up 5 points on Saturday night. His career high before was 68. He's now at 71. Do you see him getting past 100?
Well, I mean, do I see him getting past 100? Potentially. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the Vancouver Canucks down the stretch here leading into the trade deadline. They might become a weaker team. Right. They might lose some talent around him, which is going to certainly impact them. But I mean, you think back to last year. I mean, Elias was struggling somewhat. And when we say struggling, I think that what he really learned, and he learned it through the course of last year, and certainly has applied it this year. He's learned how to be real quick, where he doesn't get himself caught up in traffic. He's not the biggest guy, he's not the strongest guy, but he's quick and he's hard on a puck. But when you get held up against bigger players and stronger players, you become less effective. I think he was hanging onto the puck a little bit too long. He was being a little bit too slow in and out of tight spaces. Now you see a player that moves the puck, gets into the space, opens it up with his speed, and he's quick in and out. He's using his strengths of quick hands and quick feet, processing ability to not allow himself to get caught up in the slog, what I would call it. And I think that's part of the learning curve for young players. But there's no questioning the impact that Pettersson has.
Craig, this is Vancouver, so rumors pop up every day of the week. Teams are calling, we're told, on JT Miller, but 10 days to go before the deadline. Craig, tell me honestly, how are you going to move $56 million in a capped-out NHL in 10 days? I mean, to me, sources have told me this morning it's nearly impossible, and they don't see it happening. But what are your thoughts on teams calling on Miller?
Well, I mean, can we rewind just for a second?
Yeah.
Imagine the position the Vancouver Canucks would be in if they didn't sign JT Miller last summer.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be arguably the most coveted player on the market. Yeah. Because you got a highly productive player, you got a free agent, you don't have to do the cap calisthenics. And to me, that is where the Vancouver Canucks put themselves in a bind. And to me, there was never any need to sign JT Miller last summer. I'll leave that alone for now. Now, what could you do? I guess what you could do is look at another team and say, okay, we'll take your contract back if you want JT Miller. I'll give you an example. The Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah. Pittsburgh Penguins trying to change the look of their team. Would they take JT Miller and the Vancouver Canucks have to take Rickard Rakell? I mean, that's the type of deal that I would see having to, have to come to fruition if you want to make a trade. That's what I would see. Yep. As you're going to have to take another long-term contract back at near dollars like that to be able to affect a trade like this at this time of the year.
Yep.
Hey, Craig, the Flames lose to Philly. You're in Calgary, and I think we touched on this last week. So Calgary now out of a playoff spot. Jacob Markstrom's save percentage is well under 900. What has happened with him?
Well, I'll be honest with you guys. If I knew, I would try to help Jacob because Jacob is such a great competitor. And I know Jason LaBarbera is a top-notch goaltending coach. When I watch Jacob right now, he looks like he's lost his confidence playing the position. He looks like he's trying to find it. He looks like he's guessing a lot of the time. He's not sure of himself. When I look at a goaltender and I see a goaltender struggling like Jacob, his feet are busy. He's fading. He's backing up. He's retreating. A good friend of mine, Tim Bernhard, who I worked with for a long time, said, when you start getting yourself into protecting the cage mode, that's a surefire sign that you're not confident in your positioning. And I think that's where he's ended up. It's not the first time we've seen goaltenders struggle. It's not the first time we've seen a goaltender go through this. I think about Marc-Andre Fleury. He went through it in Pittsburgh, before trying to keep Jacob. But Jacob just continues to struggle. Get him out of there. Take him to. I would even just you put him away. Maybe just put Vladar in there and call up Dustin Wolf and just have him go work on his game outside of everything, because he's trying and he's competitive. But it feels right now that Jacob just doesn't have any confidence in his abilities, and that's a bad thing for a goaltender to have, as we all know.
Yeah. No one knows this, but Craig did this hit sitting on a wooden seat. And we thank you. We thank you so much for that. That's dedication. Thanks, Craig.
A cold, wet seat.
Yeah, one of the old Autostad seats. It's one thing to have a seat from the Montreal Forum, but get one of those Autostad seats. That's impressive. Nobody knows what we're talking about, Craig. We're too old.
Craig, we never complain. Craig, we never complained in the '80s, but these young kids, right. Craig.
Thanks for this, Craig.
See ya.
Okay, you bet.